Okay, well, good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Terry Lohman, co-chair of UU's for Just Economic Community. Sally's wearing her typical Halloween costume, which is a big black box, and we can't see her. That's supposed to be humor.
But I'm here.
How do we know you're there?
Like Horton Too's, I am
Okay.
here.
I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to watch Clayola Brown, who is the president of the A.P.R.I Randolph Institute, and she's got a fantastic story. Let's see. Now is escalating inequality, and it keeps getting worse and worse and worse. Well, there's only one way to balance billionaires, and that's with unions. Clayola, thank you for being with us today. We look forward to hearing your thoughts.
Hello, everyone. I'm Clayola Brown, president of the A.P.R.I Randolph Institute, and I'm the director of Civil and Human and Women's Rights for the AFL-CIO. For those of you who may not know what that looks like, it's a federation of about 60 unions. It represents about 12.5 million working people in every type of job across this economy. First, I want to say how honored I am to be joining you for your General Assembly. That's a big deal, and I know that. So I'm grinning a lot, and I'll probably grin a little bit more as we go along because I'm going to be learning from you as well as having this great opportunity to share with you. Now, I wish I could be there with you in person, but unfortunately I can't. But the labor movement is there 100% by way of knowing the importance of joining you in every struggle and any kind of coordination for the rights of people, for freedoms, for jobs, for equality. All of that is what I'm hoping to convey to you today for my reason for being here. I want to say hello to Terry Lohman, first of all, to say it's good to see you and it's good to be a part of this piece this afternoon. I want to thank the cohort who tries to make me look smart and intelligent, Michael Spock, but he knows I'm from the country, so you're going to get just what I am. Now, I can say to you that the labor movement and communities of leaders of faith have historical bonds. It's always been us walking side by side, no matter what the faith has been, but understanding that community involves all of who we are. And that bond is instrumental to the advancement of social and racial justice. And you can tell by looking at your screen, I am a Black woman all day, every day. But I'm also a trade unionist through and through. Now, Dr. King made it real clear when he saw the connection between racism and economic oppression. Dr. King knew too well that you could not have one without the other. You could not have racial justice without economic justice. That's why he worked so hard to bring the civil rights movement and the labor movement together. Because it was clear to him that what's the good of having the right to buy a hamburger when you didn't have the money to make that happen in the first place. Mm-hmm. Now, Dr. King knew a good union job was often the first step in generating wealth and creating economic power. Everyone knows all of the good sayings that he said. I'm not going to waste your time by saying every single thing to sound or act smart. I just want to have a conversation and know that I'm a worker. I come out of a plant. So you will not get great big old words that I will say that will make me look or sound profound. I'm still a worker, working for justice and being fortunate enough to be a part of the AFL-CIO. Now, 60 years ago this summer, 250,000 people came into Washington to march for jobs and freedom. That was where those marchers heard Dr. King speak of his dream for America, where they heard him refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice was, and I hate to still say this now, but still is, bankrupt on a lot of occasions. Justice is something that folks have to make happen. And you don't make things happen unless you're able to raise your voice and be able to talk about those causes that are firsthand to you. Now, those marches joined together for civil rights and workers' rights, freedom and jobs, that sometimes get kind of lost in the history of the 1963 March on Washington. But Dr. King, a lot of folks thought that that was his march, but he was a young, old, charismatic speaker that was invited by the actual organizers of the march. And I have the distinct pleasure of serving as the president of that organization now. Asa Philip Randolph and Bayard Rustin actually put that march together. Bayard Rustin, the complete genius, was the strategist and chief organizer, as a matter of fact. Now, as Randolph continued to do his work, he had heard Dr. King speak along the way with such passion that it was absolutely necessary to be able to relate to all of the people. And a big portion of that was to the faith community. Now, I'm not sure that many of you know that Bayard Rustin was an openly gay man, did not hide it, talked about who he was if asked, lived through the treatment of being abused because of who he was, and also reminded folks on many occasions that was not the only thing that he was. He was an activist, he was a fighter, he was a strategist, but he was also a man who believed in faith, had strong faith and strong beliefs. And even when he was brought to a point where he was treated without respect, he knew that the cause was bigger than him. And he took the abuse when they shoved him into the trunk of a car to make sure that he could at least make the march happen and other kinds of activities happen. He took that because that's what was necessary to make things happen. Now, Randolph, on the other hand, was 6'3", big baritone voice, talked with such magnetism that he could stop a room in a whole heart minute. But he too comes from a faith background. His father was a minister. His mom was a hairdresser. But his father taught him the necessity of knowing the whole person and involving the entire community, because no one person or no one organization knows everything. But when you've got faith walking along side by side with the cause that's brought you there to be a part of what is a movement, understanding that both are equal partners and understanding that it's necessary to be respectful of the total human being, you had something that you could work with. Now, although it was 60 years ago, I happened to be at that march as well. Certainly not a big player. I left the house without permission, left from Philadelphia to go into Washington, D.C. on a Greyhound bus for $2.41. Got to the march without any passes, papers, or anything else, but we had heard over the radio that this march was going to take place and what they were going to do. And thank God there were folks on the various buses, one of which I was on with one of my best friends, who had church people on the buses, organized in a fantastic way. Black women will pack a lunch in a heartbeat. And there were sandwiches enough and cold food to go with it, cold chicken, which was smelling up the whole bus, was smelling so good it drove you crazy. Pound cake that made a smile come to your face, even if you knew you were going to get a whipping when you got back home for running without permission to go to this march. When we got there, we did not understand or know what to do. And on that day, personally, I became a tree person, because those of us who were young and came to the march without credentials, we climbed up in the trees so that we could see the stage. We listened to the voices and the speakers because that was a good vantage point. And on that very day, we saw and remembered who helped us when we were talking about what the next steps were. So that was something I hid for a lot of years, that I was a tree person, but I've learned to wear it with badges of honor and pride. And I remember too, those fine sisters from the various churches that fed us up and fed us back, heading to and from Philadelphia, to make sure that we were comfortable, that we were cared for, and that we behaved. And to also understand that this was God's work that was going to be done that day. At least the message was going to be delivered that way. And we heard from a minister that absolutely captured the necessity for faith to be a part of any movement that was going to be relevant. Now, the alliance between labor and faith-based organizations, regardless of what the title of the organizations are, was one that Asa Philip Randolph made sure was one that was going to be driven, regardless of the color of the skin, who you love, the society, with or without, any kind of strict organizational limitations, but it was about people. And many of the people that took leadership roles had that double deuce. They were workers, but they were also good-faring, God-faring people. And they were people that understood the necessity of partnership. The alliance between labor and civil rights was forged through shared values, that all people deserve political and social freedom and economic justice. That alliance helped the civil rights movement achieve one of its greatest victories, the passage of the 1964 Voting Rights Act, which removed the last remaining legal barrier to broad Black political participation. Now, some folks say that really did a big deal, but it wasn't but for the feet that hit the bricks, the marchers that made the decision to march, the voices that got lifted from every element of our society, that made these passages of all of the civil rights pieces actually come to fruition. The alliance was the reason why Dr. King was in Memphis in 1968. He was there in support of 1,300 sanitation workers, all Black workforce, on strike to gain recognition for their union and a contract for a living wage. There's a difference between getting paid for a job and a living wage. You can go to work every day, and if it does not put food on the table every day, you're showing up, but still not at a level where you can do something that really does make a living difference for you, the family that you actually are doing this job for. Now, these garbage men were on strike, carrying signs that read, "I am a man, to be treated with dignity and respect." And in taking a look at the historical footage, there was a look of determination is what I'm trying to put out there, that cannot be mimicked by somebody practicing to do it. It came from the heart and through the passion. Walking alongside those sanitation workers were deacons from various churches, clergy members walking in front of these workers to really make sure that they were safe, people on the sidelines, taking a look and taking a listen and chanting with them, and even standing for them in many situations there in Memphis, to make sure that the messages that Dr. King was delivering and that other leaders, both clergy and lay, were delivering was heard in a proper way. Now, he knew that human dignity is not an abstract idea, it's an experienced and very real way that these kinds of thinkings can actually be received in the way that they ought to be, that they must be protected. And you can't be talking at people, you must talk with people in order for any message to be a collective, active, motivational piece. Collective bargaining does that. It turns a bad job into a good one because you get substance from a good job. Labor and civil rights movement were united in the belief that our country could fulfill its promise, that everyone in every race, every religion, every creed was entitled to liberty, equality, and justice. That remains true today. And these are values that the labor movement and the Unitarian Universalists share. That's why we want to have this kind of a discussion. Where we're going, how we're going to do it, and why it's important that we remain in strong coalitions to make things happen. The preamble of the AFL-CIO Constitution vows to vanquish oppression in all of its forms. The first principle of Unitarian Universalism is the inherent worth and dignity of every person. A union contract is all about the dignity of work and about the dignity of workers. A union contract is also about the dignity of self-worth and recognizing that there is value in oneself. And the union contract has brought countless working people better wages and benefits, but it does so much more, especially for people of color and those who are from the LGBTQ community who are working people also. That double-edged sword that Rustin faced at the very beginning exists today And there is no need to try to sugarcoat any of it. The reality is it's there, it's alive, and sometimes it's a fatal existence that deserves to be lifted up so that everyone that's within the workforce gets a clear understanding that this is a family of all kinds, of all of us, and to remain loyal to the principle that everyone deserves that kind of a right. Now, we continue to say that a union contract is the best way to do that, but a good, solid relationship that reflects all of who we are is an even better one. It makes all of those things that are written in verbiage even stronger because it's written on principle and unity. Now, today, union workers earn about 18% more than their non-union counterparts. African Americans, the union wage difference is about 20%. For women, it's about 23%. And for Latinos in a union, their wages are 35% higher. The union difference is more than higher wages. Union members are more likely to have access to employer-sponsored health plans and the care and retirement benefits that makes us a whole and entitled human being as we do this work that is so important, but it's beneficial to us through those arms and legs and limbs, voice and character and respect that is there for all of us. That's why it's so important for workers to be able to come together in a union freely without intimidation and obstruction. And people want to form unions. I am so happy that today I can say the AFL-CIO is alive and well and kicking and growing. I'm even happier to say that the president of the AFL-CIO, Liz Schuler, is the first female that leads the organization and does that from a place of pride and does that from a seat of strength and power and dignity that includes all of us. Women understand the difference, just like men do, just like the LGBTQ community does, but all of that makes a huge difference when you come from that space and are able to implement it into what you're fighting for. Employers, according to recent reports, are charged with violated federal labor laws in 41.5% of union elections and campaigns. That's not something that gets made up. You would think that at 2023, we would not have those issues. But what folks count on is that we will no longer have the kinds of conversations that bring us unity, that brings us strength, that brings us the kinds of voices that is reflected throughout our society. That's why labor, civil rights, and religious rights are all a part of the connection that made for a strong country, that made for a strong existence for working people. And that's exactly why here at the AFL-CIO, we are always looking, under the leadership of President Schuler and Secretary Treasurer Fred Redmond, to be able to continue the commitment that was made so very clear all of those years ago, that inclusive and respect and dignity and pride is necessary to be inclusive of all of who working people are. And a large part of it has to do with their faith. And the AFL-CIO and the Unitarian Universalists have so many shared values. We both want justice and fairness for all people, especially for people of color and the LGBTQ community. And we believe that we can provide a unique moral witness that politicians and community groups cannot, because that's where we started, that's where we are dedicated to continuing, that's where we are developing our strength. Unitarian Universalists could attend union organizing campaign meetings, offer a prayer or a speech from their religious tradition about the rights of workers to organize, assist organizers with a union election by accompanying them on workplace and house visits, advocate for employer neutrality by requesting to meet with company management, participate with faith leaders in a press conference. There are a number of ways that the dignity and respect that coming from the Unitarian community, there would give that kind of power and strength to working people that the labor movement cannot provide alone. It never has, I don't think it ever will, because without faith, there is very little opportunity to encourage and strengthen a movement, as good as it may be, from becoming better. We are natural partners. We can do many wonderful things, but the operative word is we. Understanding that alone we get nothing done, understanding that together we can do just about anything. If we can collectively be able to give our message, and if sermons can be delivered in support of working organizing unions, we will be able to get to the dream that was there, so that the reality will continue to show its face through the strength and the organizing that happens across the world. We have more than 400 local labor bodies all across the country in every state, including DC, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. And this relationship will certainly open the door to develop ongoing relationships and the possibility of working together on programs such as Labor in the Pulpit. That's what we're looking to have good dialogue about today. How is it that we do the dialogue, but more than that, how is it that we form the strength that's necessary to do what is best and doing our best to make sure that workers' rights, human rights, civil rights, women's rights, LGBTQ rights, every color in the rainbow rights that's out there, that it's done from a level playing field. Now, I know I talked a whole bunch right there in that little package, but the whole point was to hear where you are, to show a little of who we are through dialogue and conversation. I'm here, I'm not running to go anywhere. I'm so excited to have this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to the interaction between everyone that's a part of this call. So Terry, I say thank you, and Michael Schbach, I say thank you as well for making this dialogue possible. Thanks a bunch, whoever is on the Zoom. Appreciate you and looking forward to the conversation.
Hey, let's share. Okay, that was a lot of words.
It was wonderful. I've seen that before, and I'm more impressed every time I see it. It is great.
She was talking about a document we put together where UU values and the AFL-CIO values overlap, and we have 2 or 3 things that we don't overlap on. We'd like to see police unions behave, but they're in solidarity with unions. So that's really the only major one. There's some that they don't have any opinion on, like elections and democracy. But when it comes to taking care of people and healthcare and human rights, they're on the same page we are. Do you want to talk about it, or should we share our website?
Well, I have a question. This is Harold Hill in Santa Barbara. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Are there any ways for us to share sermons so that our minister could partake of material supporting labor? We have Labor Day coming up in September, and I would like to encourage our minister to do a sermon supporting labor. What resources are available?
Do you want to take that, Bob, or I can go to? I'll share the website.
Terry will share the website, and of course, this is specific to Unitarian Universalists. There are other religious groups that, in their own tradition, also work in support of Labor Day. If this doesn't come up on the screen, the UUJEC homepage has the same information.
Okay.
So, yeah, you can check that also. But I think the share screen will come up. But if not, that is a place to get the information. Yeah.
I have it. This is a web page.
There it is. Yeah.
And you go to resources and you click on it. And when you go down, it's worker justice. It's the last thing on our website. Our website's really easy, uujec.org.
Okay.
And
Okay.
Very good. I will go to that website and take a look. Thank you.
Okay.
and there's even some music and some other things that are helpful. Again,
That
things
is,
that
yeah,
yeah.
that's important too.
Oh, it's very important. Things that are actually in our gray hymn book and other places that are easy to find. And should I say a few more words, Terry, or what?
You can. I wanted to show them why
Okay.
UUs and unions are great partners.
Yeah, here
Let's
it
see if
is.
it does come up.
Yeah.
Okay. And I went through our statements of conscience for the last 23 years. And I mean, there's a big string: reproductive rights, LGBTQ rights, immigration, immigrant rights, racial justice, just transition to deal with climate change and the environment. That one is a little tricky because they want to be sure that their unions don't get thrown out of a job just because we stop using oil. Democratic process, that was there. Gender justice, economic, healthcare, exploitation of prison labor. They support our position on that. Corporate responsibility, opposition to Citizens United, stopping torture, ending present-day slavery, employment non-discrimination for sexual minorities, freedom of speech and airwaves, ending poverty, religious freedom, and moral values for a pluralistic society. And then there's 4 things that they've made no mention of. Banning capital punishment, right to bear arms, sex education, and peace. And then the one thing we want is accountability from police and police unions. And it's not that they don't want it, it's just that they're in solidarity with police unions, so they aren't going to do that. I'll go back to the page. Do you want to do the description, Bob, as we go through, or?
Oh,
I mean, we
why
have
don't you stay with it? You know, the page.
Oh, okay.
Sally, I hope
I'm
you'll
all right.
join in. Yeah, Sally will join the conversation.
The statement of solidarity with Starbucks, Amazon, Walmart, Hollywood unions, and unions in general. This is new. We just came out with that this spring, or maybe even summer. The 2022 Labor Day Toolkit. That's how to put together a service and everything.
That's really for
Music
every
to
year.
celebrate
Yeah,
later.
yeah. It's not just 22. It's this year and every
No.
year.
But we put
Actually, our new site has an entire our new site has an entire page devoted to Labor Day, which has a lot of this stuff on it and a lot of the specific holiday stuff. So I put that link in the chat.
Thank you.
I don't think I have a link to it, but my congregation in Ames, Iowa, had a daughter of a union man who gave the service last year, and she recounted her trips to union conventions, and she said the kids all rode in the back of the station wagon and they sang union songs on the way, and then she started singing the song. So it was charming, because we think of it being workers, but in this case it was the whole family that was engaged with it.
Yeah.
Bob came up with music to celebrate labor. I could update that. That I covered up there. And there are quotes for Labor Day, and AFL-CIO's sheet on the PRO Act. I wonder if that link works. Let me check it.
I think that's it. Oh, that one. One of them doesn't, but
I think the snapshot might not. Nope.
No, those 2 are good. There was a toolkit, I think, that It was a toolkit that didn't work. You may have pulled that out. No, the AFL-CIO toolkit. I think you killed that one because I killed it on on the new site.
Okay, let's see, the A.P.R.I report. I don't.
Yep.
Oh, Economic Policy Institute. Okay.
Oh, darn pop-ups.
And I guess we go back. Okay. And here's the PROACT toolkit. Let's see if that works. That's the one that doesn't work.
Yep.
I knew one of them didn't.
Yep.
More facts. Okay. Well, I think that's the same one we have above. And let's see, sample letter to U.S. senators. This was a couple of years ago. Okay. And this is our statement on UUJEC's supporting the Writers Guild Association, I guess that is.
Yep.
Oh,
Writers Guild of America.
Guild of America.
Do you have anything? You have anything on the Actors Guild? Screen Actors Guild?
I don't. Well, I think we did put something up here because it was the unions. Let's see. It probably is just saying we support it.
This was before the Actors Guild joined. I think that we put this together. This was June 3rd.
My son's a member of the Screen Actors Guild.
Mm-hmm. I think we just said Hollywood as
right. Yeah, writers and artists, so that would cover.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They have such a tricky thing, you know. They used to have a good union, but the way they got their money kind of disappeared with streaming and everything. It was all different, and they weren't getting anything for it. One of the actors said, you know, you get a check for 23 cents, and you're like, what's going on here?
Yeah, checks that used to be thousands are now single dollars, and meanwhile, the streaming companies are raking in money hand over fist. So it's not like the money isn't there. It's just they're getting subscription money, and obviously they could track who's watching what and do the royalty thing, or they could come up with a new system, but they can't just keep doing what they're doing. That's old, and it doesn't work anymore.
Well, that's right. Now we have a situation where the technology is such that they can use an actor for one movie and then put a new face on the same actor, and they don't need him anymore. You know, so that's really starting to hurt the Screen Actors Guild people. Yep.
And then for the Writers Guild, instead of ordering a season of pilots and so forth, they hire a bunch of writers at the lowest rate and may or may not do the project and don't, and then of course the new threat that's coming to writers, which may help them or maybe just a threat, is AI. And do we right?
That's right. Yeah.
So the new system has to take all that into account somehow, and better brains than mine need to figure it out. But
the way the contracts were written, they said they had the rights to this image of the actor and the voice and everything. Well, then AI comes along, and they could take that one contract and go on for the rest of their life on the same thing. At the very bottom, we have a couple book reviews, and these are on Beacon Press books, but they're not new. They're probably 2015 or so. Okay, sample letters. Let's see.
I think that's pretty much everything we have on the website.
Well, I'm glad you have all that.
Yeah. Well, we think it's what other way do you have to try to make employment fair? You know, you have a big corporation that's, you know, working worldwide. If the workers here want too much money, they just move production to Indonesia or some other place and leave our people out of it.
That's true.
Corporations have too much power, in short.
Right. I agree.
Well,
Yeah.
any more questions?
Well, I'll
What?
make a suggestion. If you're in a congregation that is not going to have a sermon for Labor Day weekend about labor, just stand up doing announcements or whatever, joys and concerns, or any opportunity you have. Maybe you put a stone in the bowl. I don't know what your custom is, but just say, this is the Labor Day weekend, and I just wanted to express some concern about working people. And in particular, you might mention things like hot weather. That's a big concern right now.
Yes.
Huge concern, especially in states like California.
And in places like Texas, where they're outlawing breaks for people who are working outdoors. It's crazy.
Things. The point, of course, is that some of the first responders and others are indeed union people, and they're well paid and well protected, and we still celebrate them because they're in a very difficult position. But we're especially concerned about people who are not represented by unions, who are not well compensated, who might not even get minimum wage in some cases. Of course, prisoners and others are being used to fight fires. Immigrant workers, migrant workers, these people are really getting the worst of it, and not just during disasters, but afterwards during the cleanup. The really dirty, difficult jobs get dumped, especially on a lot of immigrant workers and others who are really marginalized. So we're concerned about these people. We're especially concerned right now, today. We want everybody to have adequate representation, adequate protection, compensation, and we want everybody to be included in the climate change conversation. Terry mentioned the just transition to a clean energy society. I had the experience, I was in Boston for a number of years, where the city hall was all in favor of insulation and energy conservation systems and installing all of these things, but it was paying minimum wage. It had gone around the unions despite promises made that things would be good wages. And Boston's a very expensive town, as you know. And it was religious groups that really blew the whistle on that and said, hey, wait a moment, the green economy is supposed to be a just economy, a fair economy. It's not supposed to be back to the plantation system and let's call it green. So, the just transition is very important. And that's something to talk about on Labor Day. And there are other concerns as well. But I always emphasize, I was in another conversation a few minutes ago with religious groups about Labor Day. And I said, focus most of your attention on the present moment. Because if all the minister can talk about is, well, the labor unions did some great stuff 100 years ago, Mother Jones and, Eugene Debs, they were great people. If all we're talking about is stuff that happened 100 years ago, the conversation isn't going to go anywhere. So we need to look at young workers, especially Trader Joe's, Amazon, Starbucks, because this new generation is suddenly re-engaged with labor. That's the future we hope. That's the future we want. And it needs a lot of emphasis in the Labor Day weekend. And if your minister won't talk about it for any reason, maybe you're the one who has to get up and talk about it on Sunday.
That's
the effort. Yeah.
The
That's
other
a very
big change is the gig work and the part-time work, so you avoid giving people benefits and classifying people as independent contractors, even though they're really not. I remember hearing a truck driver talking when they were talking about raising the Bayonne Bridge. He said, the company's name is on my truck. I won't work for anybody else. But they called me an independent contractor, and when they want us to put these new expensive engines in, they want me to do it on my $30,000 salary.
Yeah.
Just right. Yeah.
That's absolutely right. And in Santa Barbara, it's particularly important for us to try to support the unions and encourage the union workers, because they're the only ones that can afford the housing costs in Santa Barbara. We're among the highest in the country.
Yeah.
So that's
I think we're preaching to the choir here.
Yeah, right.
So you have to go back to your congregation, raise these issues, and realize you got the working people aren't sort of far away in some distant place. You'll find them in your congregation.
Oh, sure.
Encourage people to step forward, talk about what they do, what their children are doing, in the workforce, and try to, as Clayola was saying a few minutes ago, don't talk at people, talk with people.
Right.
And you can do that on Sunday mornings. We hope.
Okay. Yeah, even in coffee break you can do it.
Yeah, sure.
And those of us who can afford it, avoid the Walmarts and the Amazons and the big box stores. Patronize the others, and go to places like Better World Books, where you can get cheap books and still support a company that is donating a book for every book you buy to and recycling the library books.
Good point.
Think out of the box. Yep.
Yeah, right.
I like to tell a story about my father's support of unions. He didn't work for a union. He was a real estate salesman and a newspaper circulation manager, and we patched in a few other jobs there along the way. But he bought a new Ford in 1965, and when he sold real estate, he would drive anywhere. So the road was closed, but he drove down it, and there was mud and ruts and everything else. So when he was coming back from where he was showing the property, he noticed he was out of gas. So he pulled into a gas station, and the attendant, this is 1965, the attendant put in the hose and started it up, and the gasoline went right out onto the ground. And the service station attendant said, "Is this candid camera?" His dad drove in. I mean, obviously he had to have a little gas. Well, it took, I don't know, several weeks to get a new tank because there was a strike going on. And I said to Dad, "Doesn't that piss you off?" And he said, "No, we support unions, even if it inconveniences us, because they're really important in the way our country fits together. And without them, it would be a mess."
Very good point.
Yeah.
Well, shall we call tonight and see what they're doing to Trump? Or not? That's not a requirement. I think I'll read a book. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming, everybody.
My
Jane,
pleasure.
how was your trip? But you're muted, so we don't know.
I'm still halfway on it. I'm in New York at the moment, and with my granddaughter, who who I was reading to, which is why I was late joining. And I'm afraid Lee kind of nodded off because we're still on Norwegian time. We're still in the throes of
What would it be, about
lag.
5 in the morning, 6 in the morning?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. Anyway, it was a great time. And Lee tells me the talk we just had here was good too. So sorry I missed most of it.
Good.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
I went to my local TD bank branch to get some cash the other day, and they said, we've got new security procedures. We're going to need this, that, and the other thing. So
They were the good guys.
after the horses left the barn.
Yeah.
Good night. Anyway,
Good.
Lee can fill me in on what happened. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Okay,
Sorry I
bye-bye.
missed it.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah.